Hello, we're on the second video for this lesson, 7.1 and 7.3. At the moment, we're still on 7.1. We haven't made it to 7.3 yet. Now, this one's kind of it's got lots of words and lots of things going on. It's sheet metal trades. The length of a chord of a circle is given by the formula L equals 2 times the square root of 2 times RH minus H squared, where R is the radius of the circle and H is the height of the arc above the chord. And so we have a drawing over here so that you can see this, and the chord is going to be drawn right here. All right, that's our chord. A better color would work better there. And then it talks about the radius of the circle and the height. And so let's look at if you have a portion of a circular disc for which R equals 5.5 inches and H equals 4.25 inches, what is the length of the chord? It says see the figure and then round to the nearest tenth of an inch. And when you saw this, it says the length of the chord, so that's your L. That's why I drew the pink on there. So R is 5.5. We're going to go ahead and put it in decimal form. H is 4.25. All right, so let's work with this formula. So 2 times, I'm going to draw a long thing out there, 5.5 times 4.25 minus 4.25 squared. We'll go ahead and put that in parentheses, squared. And then we'll just do some calculating here. So when we multiply 2 times 5.5 times 4.25, we're going to end up with 46.75, and we subtract 18.0625, and then we end up with 28.6875. And that's what we're going to take the square root of. So use the square root key on your calculator. Take the square root of 28.675, or you can say 2 times the square root, and that's fine to do it that way. And so L is going to be 10.712. Look back at your problem to see that we are rounding to the nearest tenth of an inch. So that is 10.7 inches. All right, so that's all worked out and calculated. You definitely want to practice this. Practice keying this in your calculator. It's best to do some of the calculations before you try to key the whole thing in, because it's really hard to get it right if you're trying to put everything in at once. It just doesn't work out that well. All right. Okay, so now we're on solving simple equations. This is section 7.3, and just some information about equations. An equation is a statement that two quantities are equal. There will always be an equal sign, and to solve an equation is to find the unknown, right? So we're going to have a variable for our unknown. And remember, whatever you do to one side of the equation must be done to the other side of the equation. When a blank page comes up, I have to pause the video and close it and bring it back up. That's some glitchy things that happen sometimes with my app. All right, so we're solving equations, and we're going to solve by using the opposites of whatever's there. So for instance, on the first equation, it says a plus 6 equals 23. To undo that, we're going to subtract. So think about undoing the operation that's there. And that means in this case we have to subtract to solve. So we subtract 6 on both sides, and we get a equals 17. Now you can check this because 17 plus 6 equals 23, right? So that checks, and we know then that is correct. On the next one, we have 6 equals a minus 2.5. So we're going to add to solve this time because the opposite of subtraction is addition. We're going to add 2.5 or 2.5. You can do that either way. And so 8.5 equals a, or a is 8 1/2. So it's fine to do that either way. We learned about going back and forth between decimals and fractions in previous chapters. So the next one says x divided by 3 equals 7. I'm going to write this out again. And then to solve this, we are going to multiply by 3, right? Since it's x divided by 3, we can multiply both sides of our equation by 3 to come up with that answer. Right? 3 goes into 3 one time, so x is 21. And once again, you can check that, right? 21 divided by 3 equals 7. So you can see that it does check. And x equals 21 is our correct answer. You can always check an equation by just substituting back in your solution and making sure that it works. That means both sides are equal. That tells you that it is correct and it was working in that equation. Okay, on this next one, this is negative 12 times z. To undo multiplication, we divide. We're going to divide by negative 12. And z equals negative 0.3. A positive divided by a negative is negative, and so we end up with a negative answer here. Now on the next one, there's different ways to go. You could divide by 3/5 because it's 3/5 times x equals 10. That's not my preferred way to do it, but you know, it does work with your calculators. I like to multiply by the reciprocal of 3/5 because if I take 3/5 times its reciprocal of 5/3, I get 15 over 15, which equals 1. So it takes care of that number with the x because when you're solving, you want it to be a 1x. Let me write this out so I have space here. I'm going to multiply then by 5/3. And you can use your calculator to multiply that if you want to. So that is 50 over 3. Or we can write that as a mixed number. That would be 16 2/3. All right, finished with that one. The next one is z over 8 equals 5/4. That's z divided by 8. So we can multiply by 8 because we want to get the z by itself. And that will cancel out that denominator. On the other side, we're multiplying by 8. And z is equal to 5 times 8 would be 40 over 4. So z equals 10. Okay, so that was solving simple equations. And then we use that in some word problems and some application problems with formulas, and we're solving for certain parts of that formula. Okay, so here's our first one. D equals RT, that's a formula. This one is an aviation problem. D equals RT is used to calculate the distance d traveled by an object moving at a constant average speed r during an elapsed time. How long would it take a pilot to fly 1,240 miles at an average speed of 220 miles per hour? And so the 1,240 is our distance, and the 220 is our rate, right? That's how fast we're going. So it's the rate, the miles per hour. In the formula, it's 1,240 equals 220 t. Says how long would it take, right? So we are finding t. We're going to do this by dividing we divide by 220, then we find that T is, let's see, it's 5 point, we have to round that. It looks like 1240 divided by 220 is, I'm going to write this out this way. So 5.63, and the 63 is repeating. Okay, so we're going to round this. It says, how long will it take? We can round it to 5.64 hours, and that's our time. Now we can also write that in hours and minutes by taking 0.64 times 60, and that's going to give us about 38 minutes. All right, so that could be 5 hours and 38 minutes if you wanted to convert that decimal number to minutes. Okay. So here's our next one. We're going to use the formula for the water pressure P in pounds per square foot is related to the depth of water D in feet by the formula P equals 62.4 D. 62.4 pounds is the weight of 1 cubic foot of water. Now remember, a cubic foot of water is 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot. So it makes a cube that's 1 foot on each side. If the material forming the bottom of a tank is made to withstand 800 pounds per square foot of pressure, what is the maximum safe height for the tank? Okay, so the P is, this is our P, and then we're going to just substitute that in for P, and 62.4 D. So once again, we are dividing to solve by 62.4 in this case. And I'll just go ahead and write it that way. It's 12.82. And this one, if we round it like the 62.4, then we're going to say about 12.8 feet. And that's just rounding it according to the number that was given in the problem. Okay. So let's see what we've got here. I think I'm going to stop this video and finish up on the next one, and we'll have just 3 more problems to do, starting with this one that you see here, number 16. So I'm going to end right here.